The death of Samantha Miller in Folly Beach, South Carolina, is one locals will remember for a long time. The young bride was killed on her wedding day, and her husband seriously injured after a drunk driver crashed into the back of their golf cart. That driver, a 25-year-old graduate called Jamie Lee Komoroski, now awaits trial over her death, the additional injuries, and the DUI. In today's video, we are going to go over the current case surrounding this accidental death and Komoroski's defense. There are some who sympathize with the young woman because of her age and certain circumstances. This is a tragic accident with no immediate malice. Yet, further details surrounding her past offenses, her behavior in jail, and the additional wrongful death suit make this heartbreaking case even more interesting. Once you've seen all the evidence against Komoroski and the case for the defense, leave us a comment with your views. People are really torn on this emotive case. Some are calling for her to rot in jail for killing a bride on her wedding day, and others for more leniency. So what do you think will happen? Is she going away for a long time? Or will she get lucky? We've all made mistakes in our lifetime. Nobody's perfect. Right now, in this very moment, a 25-year-old woman faces trial for killing a bride on her wedding day. It is the absolute worst example of a DUI and death by dangerous driving. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the murder case of Jamie Lee Komoroski and her questionable defense.
Jamie Komoroski is accused of driving drunk and killing a bride leaving her wedding. She's charged with 3 counts of felony DUI. She has been in jail since April 18th, tried to get bond this week, and she was denied.
At first, it is easy to empathize with a young woman who apparently made one tragic mistake. However, the further details we are about to reveal to you show a much darker side to Miss Komoroski. Has she condemned herself to a life behind bars with her actions and attitude? Or will she get a lenient sentence? You can let us know later. First, let's dive into the case. The fateful crash in Folly Beach. Let's start by looking at what happened in Folly Beach on April 28th. This was the wedding day for Samantha Miller and Eric Hutchinson. They were traveling back from their wedding reception on a road in the area when a car went into the back of them at high speed. The driver was a 25-year-old college graduate called Jamie Lee Komoroski. She had been drinking in the area on the night of the crash, bar hopping around the local area, before getting behind the wheel of her Toyota Camry. Reports from the crash state that Komoroski was traveling at around 65 miles per hour, which is significantly higher than the local 25 miles per hour speed limit. Komoroski was later found to have a blood alcohol level of 0.261, which was over 3 times the legal limit. Those factors combined mean that this really was an accident waiting to happen. However, the extent of the physical and emotional damage caused is unthinkable. Komoroski ended up crashing at high speed into the golf cart. The force of the impact was so intense that it threw the cart 100 yards as it rolled several times. Now, if you can imagine your standard golf cart and the lack of structural support there, you can imagine how devastating this was for those inside. The passengers found on the road required immediate attention, and the cart was a complete wreck. 3 of the passengers on the golf cart ended up in the hospital, and the 4th was declared dead at the scene. Komoroski showed no signs of injury and was able to walk away from her vehicle. At this point, it is also worth noting that the people on the golf cart were acting lawfully. The vehicle was road legal and permitted to be out that night. The victims were driving away from a wedding reception at an appropriate speed, and there is nothing to indicate any wrongdoing on behalf of the driver of the cart. Who were the victims of the Folly Beach crash? The focus of this video is on the murder suspect, Jamie Lee Komoroski. Yet, we need to take a moment to talk about the victims. The circumstances surrounding the incident make this case even more heartbreaking and emotive, with the potential to sway our judgment. Let's start with the woman who died at the scene. She was 34-year-old Samantha Miller and had just married the love of her life in a ceremony that day. Samantha was on the golf cart with her new husband heading away from the reception venue. Family members say she was the happiest she had ever been and didn't want the night to end. The impact from the speeding Toyota left her with such severe trauma, medics pronounced her dead at the scene. Attending officers did try life-saving measures after finding no pulse or signs of breathing, but it was in vain. The second victim of the crash was Samantha's husband, Eric Hutchinson. He was one of 3 other patients taken to hospital. That night, Staff at the Medical University of South Carolina told the police that 2 were critical and 1 may not survive until morning. Arik did survive despite a serious brain injury. He also ended up with several broken bones and required surgeries. When he woke up, he learned his wife hadn't made it. The other 2 other victims on the golf cart at the time were also part of the wedding party. Naturally, news reports make less of their condition because of the focus on the newlyweds and the death of Samantha. One was Arik's brother-in-law, Benjamin Garrett, and the other was his son, Brogan Garrett. Both were helping escort the couple back from the reception when the crash occurred. One also received serious trauma and open fractures. An extreme case of death by dangerous driving. On September 12th, the courts indicted Komoroski on 4 counts. Those 4 felony counts include 2 counts of DUI with great bodily injury, 1 of DUI resulting in death, and 1 of reckless homicide. Despite her assumption that she would receive bail, she is currently still behind bars in county jail awaiting trial. The court refused bail on the grounds that she was a flight risk.
After considering all the facts and circumstances of this matter, I do indeed find that the defendant is a risk of flight and danger to the community, and I'm going to deny a bond. However, the state has until March of 2024 to try this case. That does not take place. The defendant is to be released on a $150,000 surety bond. She will be subjected to electronic monitoring and house arrest. She is only to leave her home for medical emergency on prior order of the court. She will also be required to wear a SCRAM monitor, which monitors the alcohol for a sensor. It's a fairly sophisticated device and virtually impossible.
As they held Komoroski under suicide watch shortly after her arrest, perhaps there were justifiable fears that she might flee the country to avoid trial. So far, this seems like a pretty cut and dry case. A young woman causes death by dangerous driving via intoxication. There is a clear level of responsibility based on the evidence. However, there is more to uncover in this tragic case as her defense team tries to get the best possible deal. Keep watching to learn more about Jamie Lee Komoroski's character and where this case may go. Remember, if you enjoy this video, please give it a like and support our channel. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe so you get instant access to all our new content. The case against Jamie Lee Komoroski. The defense team taking care of Komoroski's case has really tried to paint both her and the incident in the best possible light. They originally sought her release on a $100,000 bond, with the condition she would enter a substance abuse rehab program. Understandably, they are trying to focus on her character to minimize her punishment and get her out of jail faster. For a while, it was easy to look at this through her eyes and offer a little sympathy. Maybe it was nothing more than accidental death by DUI, where a young woman lost control of her vehicle. There were reports in May that Jamie Lee was on suicide watch in the county jail, which suggests that something about the case deeply affected her mental state. However, there are 4 important points to this case that we need to talk about. They show that Komoroski may not be the nice, innocent girl portrayed. 1. Komoroski's past offenses. Part of the defense's case supporting Komoroski hinges on her character and lack of prior convictions. At first, this suggests that the college graduate was fully law-abiding, and that this accident was a tragic one-off. However, there is actually a series of traffic violations in her name. The first offense occurred in May 2018, when she received a citation for traveling less than 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. She pleaded guilty and paid a $76.50 fine. The same thing happened at a later date. In November 2018, she pleaded guilty to driving at an unreasonable speed in icy road conditions. The following year, she also received a $25 fine for failing to signal. Some shrug these prior offenses off and say they aren't relevant to the case. They are minor infringements that didn't cause any harm. Still, the frequency of them shows a disregard for speed limits, road safety, and those traveling on the road with her. It is a matter of luck that she didn't hit anything or anyone on those icy roads or while speeding. The repetition of the fine for speeding shows that she did not learn her lesson either. 2. Komoroski's attitude at the scene. For a good college kid with a good character, Komoroski's reaction to the crash wasn't great. Most people who accidentally caused wreckage as horrific as the one involving the golf cart would feel mortified and fearful of killing someone. When officers arrived on the scene, Komoroski was resistant. She insisted she had done nothing wrong despite the extent of the wreckage of the golf cart. It is unclear how she came to this conclusion, and whether shock, intoxication, or complete ignorance of the carnage were to blame. She also refused to take a sobriety test despite needing help to stand. Officers at the scene asked her to describe how drunk she was on a scale of 1 to 10. She claimed to be an 8, yet she also insisted she hadn't had much to drink. Although, as you will see later, this was a lie. She may not have acted with malice, but this doesn't help. Because she refused the test, she had to have blood taken to determine her level of intoxication. This was how they learned she was so far over the legal limit. 3. Komoroski's attitude in the jail. Then there is Komoroski's attitude while in jail awaiting trial. While those reports about suicidal thoughts in May still stand, this is in contrast to other reports regarding phone calls made from the jail months later. Some of these calls went to her father, who assured her he was getting the best lawyers on the case. Komoroski comes across as showing little remorse, asking why this had to happen to her and not referring to the victims at all.
I still just don't know why this had to happen to me.
Because bad things happen to good people, honey. That's why. It's just fate. It's just something that happened to you, and we are going to deal with it the best we can, okay? And it's life-altering.
An interesting detail from these calls refers to some potential help. She talks about someone in the county system called Graziano, who is going to help her out. Apparently, she empathizes with Komoroski and says she should be back home with her family.
You have to, my dad said for you not to, talk to anyone about, this or anything, but, the deputy sheriff, the head person of Charleston County, I met with her today, and she's, trying to help me out.
That's good.
And she, is you don't need, I don't want you in here, you should be with your family, blah, blah, blah. So that's, really good.
Jamie Lee went on to say that Graziano knew of a similar case from her personal life and related to her story. The extent of this help is unclear, but it seems to have given Komoroski some hope that she will get off lightly. There are also transcripts from calls to her boyfriend, which show her complaining a lot about her treatment. She talks about the conditions and the meals in jail, insisting that things will be better when she gets out. Again, it all focuses on her future and her suffering, with no mention of the accident and what she actually did. This mistake ruining her life doesn't appear to have affected anyone else. There is the potential for some denial here. Perhaps she isn't able to face what happened, so has blocked out the deaths entirely. Or maybe she just is that cold about it. The additional wrongful death suit against Komoroski. When weighing up the evidence and other factors about this case, it is easy to side with the family here. So much of the behavior of Komoroski and the circumstances around the accident show that she is culpable and should face justice. There is, however, one final aspect of this story that we need to take into account.
She was so happy. The last thing I remember her saying was she wanted the night to never end.
That was the last thing she said to you?
The last thing she said. I could see my mom's face, and you could just tell something was wrong. And I asked her, "Where's Sam? Where's Sam?" And then that's when she told me there was an incident, and that Sam didn't make it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. That night going from an all-time high to an all-time low.
Hutchinson took out a lawsuit for wrongful death. At first, you might think that this will be nothing but a heartbroken husband out to get some sort of vengeance for his wife. If it isn't enough to see Komoroski go to jail, the next best thing is to receive some form of financial compensation for what happened that night. This is understandable considering the emotional and financial implications of the accident. Hutchinson is bereft and dealing with both the loss of his bride and the emotional trauma of the accident. There are also considerable medical costs related to his surgeries and the care given to the other family members. Meanwhile, the family put a GoFundMe in place to provide assistance for these costs and the burial costs of Samantha. The details of the case are damning and show an intent to see as many people pay the price for his loss as possible. Hutchinson has gone after the bars that served Komoroski on the night, implying they are also to blame for the events that took place. The suit states that she slurred and staggered around town, visiting several bars before getting into her car. If they hadn't served her to the extent they did, perhaps she wouldn't have ended up speeding and ramming into the golf cart. At the time of the incident, Komoroski stated she had just 1 beer and 1 tequila shot, but clearly, that wasn't the case. Hutchinson went after 5 bars that allegedly served her drinks before the crash, claiming it was their responsibility to see the state she was in and to refuse to service. At the time of recording, 2 of the bars named have paid a reasonable amount to Hutchinson for their responsibility. They are the Drop-In Bar in Deli and the Crab Shack. Details on exact figures have not been revealed. This result will surely play into the prosecution's case against Komoroski, and the idea that she was more intoxicated than she admits. What does the future hold for Jamie Lee Komoroski? This is a big question right now because the case is ongoing. Normally, on this channel we go over older cases and talk about the final sentence and how well it fits the crime. Here, we are yet to see whether Jamie Lee Komoroski gets off lightly or faces a severe sentence for the death of Samantha Miller. There are enough counts against her to suggest she might be behind bars for a long time. She's looking at potentially 25 years in prison on each count. At the time of making this video, the plan is to hold the trial in March 2024. There is the possibility that Komoroski could end up on a $150,000 surety bond and house arrest, subject to electronic monitoring. So, what do you think? Does Komoroski deserve to go away for the rest of her life because of the recklessness and malice behind the murder? Or should the sentence be more lenient due to her age and lack of past felonies? On the one hand, Komoroski is a young woman who made a tragic mistake through reckless choices. Samantha Miller's death was accidental that night, and the circumstances do tap into our emotions. On the other, Komoroski is clearly a young woman with a disregard for the law and few signs of remorse. The levels of self-serving narcissism at the scene and in jail don't make it easy to empathize with her case. All we can do now is wait for the trial to begin in March, see what happens, and wish all those from the wedding party well. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon with another case of true crime.